one. Welcome to a special edition of the Health Hackers Podcast. My guest today is Greg McNair, also known on Instagram as the RVCarnivore. Greg, you are doing
Hey,
something pretty
Jason.
hey, first of all, so glad to have you. I just want to let
Thank you for
everybody
having me.
know you are trying to stay safe. You're on the road right now to Ketocon, driving from Florida to Austin, Texas, right?
That's right.
Okay.
1,111 miles from my shop to Palmer Event Center. You can't make that number up.
Wow. Yeah, 1111, right.
Yep.
So the synchronicities continue. The universe is conspiring on our behalf here. So
I
tell
was
me,
1 week and 1 day away when I left. How about that? So there's
that
two
is
more ones.
that's awesome. How long does it take to go from point A to point B?
So if I were driving without an 18,000 pound, 43-foot RV behind me, it would take me about 17 hours tops end. Top end. I'm probably going to make it 19 hours, only because I do 60 everywhere I go when I'm towing this, or slower, depending on what the speed limit is. I don't care if the speed limit's 80 in Texas, I'm doing 60 and everybody's passing me.
Oh,
So I like to tell people that I am pulling a suitcase and a toiletry bag and my toilet and my shower.
awesome.
So yeah,
Home, home sweet home, right?
it is
So
100% it is.
okay, so the big question probably on everyone's mind, and this is what I want to know. What would compel someone to drive 1,111 miles across the country in an RV that is decorated as a butcher map? Why would someone do that? Why are you doing this, Greg?
I have one word to sum everything up: passion. I
Okay.
am extremely passionate about this lifestyle, and I am passionate about helping others. Always have been, always will be. That's why.
So let's get into the lifestyle. What is it exactly, and how did it help you, and how do you think it can help other people?
Okay, so I will be 53 on April 29th of this year. And real quick, I want to say something before anybody, I'm sure this is going through people's minds. I want to allay a lot of fears. I have two hands and they're both on the wheel most of the time. And I am constantly looking at the road. I'm looking at my rearview mirrors. I'm looking at my gauges. That's called a gauge scan. I used to be a pilot. I like to look around and be observant. So I feel like I'm much less distracted talking to you because I'm not looking at the screen. Sorry, folks. It's not that I'm rude. Um, I just want people to understand there is a huge safety aspect to this. And I feel less distracted driving, talking to you with my phone mounted to my dashboard than I see most people out here who are screaming at their spouses in the car, or they're yelling at people on the road, or they're holding their phone in their hand, or they're texting and driving. That's not me. So I
Right.
just want to make sure everybody understands I do have my head about my shoulders when I'm doing this. So just just to allay some fears.
Yeah,
Now,
just people can think of this as kind of a modern version of the CB radio, right?
the children's band.
There you
Yes,
go.
that is correct. Okay, so now let me answer a question
Hands off.
for you.
Yes.
This came about because I was in very good health up until I was about 20. And when I turned 20, I got married, had a wife with a child, and I started eating really poorly. And I was a whole lot less active. And I was working 40 to 60 hours a week, like most people do, and still going to college. And now I was raising a wife and a child, and my life got pretty busy. I kind of fell into the same rut that everybody else fell into, which was eat something quick that was easy to make, or whatever my wife would make, and it usually came out of a box. And that started my progression towards regression of really bad health. So I'm going to tell you the way I tell it to everybody. I'm going to hit you right between the eyes. In 2008, I have a photo that I'm going to share with you that you might be able to edit into this. I don't know. I'll share a photo of you of what I looked like in '08. I
Okay.
was 250 pounds, extremely out of health. My brother was selling carotid artery stents, and he showed me one day. They're about that long in a package, and he showed it to me one day, and he said, "I'm holding this one for you. I'm setting it right there in that corner." And I thought, "Oh wow, that's kind of ugly, but I get it." And one day, 2012, I walked into the office of a man who I consider to be a father to me, my second father. And I said, "Hey, Joe, how are you?" And he looked at me and he pulled his glasses down to the bridge of his nose and he looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Hi, Joe, nice to see you too." And he said, "No, I'm really upset right now. What have you done?" And I said, I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "You have a wife," and by then I had two children. "You have a wife and two children, and one day you're going to want to have grandchildren, but you're never going to get to see them because you're apparently not taking care of yourself." And I said, "Yeah, okay." He says, "No, I'm just going to tell you, Greg, you're fat and you're going to die of a heart attack if you don't do something about it." At the time, Joe was, let's see, this was 11 years, he was 70. Joe had abs of steel. He was a 70-year-old, best fit of anybody I'd ever seen. He made Mr. Olympia look like somebody who was just starting out. And he said, "You need to take better care of yourself." And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "No, I don't mean just a little bit. I mean starting right now. The minute you walk out that door, you're going to start doing whatever it takes to get better." I said, "Okay." So I'm going to fast forward. I did this thing called HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. It's a hormone drop that it's a hormone who pregnant women excrete to help nourish their bodies and the bodies of their unborn children that they're carrying in the womb. And it burns fat. And I don't know the science behind it. I know that there's people watching this who do. But in addition to taking 3 drops a day under my tongue, and it cost me $400 for the whole thing, I ate 500 calories a day. Now think about what 500 calories a day of anything is going to look like.
Right.
500 calories a day of bad food is not much, and it's certainly not going to sustain you, as you well know. I was eating chicken, maybe 4 ounces of a breast of chicken, dry, baked, and that was it. And lettuce, no salad dressing. Well, I take that back. Vinegar. That was it. And I did that for 44 days, and I went from 150 pounds, I'm sorry, 250 pounds to 174. Do the math on that time. How much I lost every day. There were days where I was waking up the next morning and I'd lost 2 pounds. It was nothing short of amazing, and it was miraculous. And I couldn't believe my own eyes when I looked at myself in the mirror. That's when I learned, you've lost weight when you have to go buy new underwear. That's pretty significant stuff, right?
Right.
So that happened to me, and I was pretty impressed by that. Well, like everybody else, if you don't do something that's sustainable, it's going to come back. And guess what? It came back with a vengeance. All that weight roared back on me. By 2014, I was in such ridiculously horrible shape again. I was right back to 250, and I felt horrible, miserable, run down. And 2015, my wife and I of 25 years got a divorce. I moved to Florida because I'd always wanted to live by the coast. So I moved to Florida, opened up a beach wheelchair rental company, and I started losing weight. I started running, and I got myself in a really good shape. And 2017, I was doing keto really hard. And I lost a lot of weight and feeling real good, getting myself back to where I was. Went through a really horrible breakup to a person, and after that, went down the carb hole again. And I said, "You know what? I can't do this to myself." So I started running. I was a marathon runner. I was running 5 miles every 3 days. So I was running more than a 5K every 3 days. Ran my own 5Ks, which was kind of funny. I would run about 25 to 30 miles a week on average. I was riding my bicycle easily 100 miles a week. That was with my eyes closed, because I would ride up and down A1A, the beach, at Daytona Beach, where the view's great. And I was CrossFitting 3 days a week. I had abs. I had arms that were rock solid. I had thrombosis in my arms. I looked great. I felt great. And I tore my gastric muscle in my right leg. And for those who don't know, that's like getting an Achilles tendon break. And it sidelined me for 6 months. I couldn't run. I couldn't walk. There was no working out. It was going to be Popeye upstairs and skinny boy, soy boy legs downstairs. Like I'd missed leg day my whole life, right? And my cardio was going to start going away. And I thought, you know what? I've got to get myself back. And I've always heard that diet starts, or your health starts at the plate, right? At the fork. So I thought, okay, I can do this. I can teach myself how to eat better, because I could eat literally 10 to 15,000 calories a day. I could go to McDonald's and eat two Big Mac supersized meals with the gigantic French fries. I'd lose weight overnight because I was so active. That wasn't the right aspect of life. I was just doing what everybody said: work out, eat a little bit less, but I couldn't because I needed the energy. So I was still eating like I was working out, and I couldn't do that. That caught up to me. I gained about 30 to 40 pounds back. And my mother in law at the time, actually, she was my fiance's mom, a good friend of mine, Alicia. She started doing this thing called the carnivore diet. And I said, "Now, what is that?" And she explained it to me. And I said, "Okay, this is pretty cool. I love steak. I love bacon. I love beef. Let's do this." So I did carnivore and I took it to the extreme. I kind of went lion diet and I stopped drinking. I stopped doing everything that was bad for me. And for 2.5 months, I was a carnivore. And oh my God, Jason, I felt so good. I couldn't believe that I could sustain this. It never got boring to me. There was a challenge, but it wasn't boring. How can you get bored eating a ribeye steak, right? You
Beyond
can't.
me.
So I don't know. I don't know. So I did that. I lost a ton of weight. I felt great. And one weekend, it was the weekend leading just after Thanksgiving, leading into December. And my fiance and her 3 kids, we all decided we live in an hour from Orlando, and I said, you know what, let's go to ice. So we went to Gaylord Opryland Ice, and I said, you know what, I've been a really good kid for 2.5 months. I'm going to treat myself tonight. So I remember distinctly what I had. We sat down in the ice at Gaylord. It's very cold. You wear a jacket. They have cinnamons and hot chocolate and coffee. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. We got those little bitty 4 packs of cinnamons. Well, it's a 4 pack of little cinnamons. They're like sliders, if you will. So I had a slider and I had a cup of hot chocolate because I haven't had hot chocolate in so long. It was not sugar free, the chocolate. And I had a Jack Daniels and Diet Coke because, that's healthy. And I ate, I want to say chicken wings that night, which the chicken wings weren't the worst thing for me. So that was dinner and our snack after ice. And then the next morning we woke up, went to Denny's where I had scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, and they serve pancakes with your meal. So I ate one of my pancakes. I really overloaded my body with sugar and I didn't realize what I had done to myself. So after being average 74 blood sugar, I checked myself 3 times a day, and that included the dawn effect. That would include waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning after getting 5 hours of sleep and being totally rested, ready to go. I pricked my finger, I'd have higher blood sugar because of the dawn effect. Then I would check it again around 1, 2 o'clock, and then I'd check it again around 7 or 8 o'clock. My average was always 74, and it was that way for, I'm going to say, a little over a month and a half. So I didn't really feel like I had any problems. And I was going on a mission trip with Oasis Church in Ormond Beach, Florida on December the 6th. And so December 3rd, I decided I'm not feeling really good. I'm sorry, December 2nd, I decided I wasn't feeling so hot, had a little bit of a head cold. I'm about to hop on a DC-3 and go to 8,000 feet, leaving Fort Pierce, Florida, headed to the Bahamas for Hurricane Dorian survivors. And I thought, I probably need to get checked out. So Doc in the Box prescribed me methylprednisolone. That is a steroid, and it's the blister pack of 7 doses day 1, all the way down to 1 dose on day 7. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I was on my first 4 doses that I'd taken in the afternoon on the 2nd, leading into the 3rd. And the morning of the 3rd, I was drinking coffee with my wife. I had had 3 ounces of pork the night before with no sugar. I had maybe 4 ounces of coffee in my system, and I stood up because I needed to go to the bathroom. It was 7 a.m. on December 3rd. And when I stood up, I lost my balance and I fell over on her. And she said, "Quit joking." I said, "I'm not joking. That's weird. I feel like I'm drunk." She said, "Well, what's the matter, baby?" I said, "I don't know." So I pushed off of her. I walked around the sofa. I got to an open spot on the ground, fell flat on my chest.
Wow.
I blacked out enough that I didn't see myself at the ground. But when my eyes opened, I was looking down the kitchen floor at my refrigerator and thought, well, this is a weird position to be in. why am I here? And she scooped me up. And long story short, 3 hours later, the doctor at the hospital had determined that I had had a stroke. And I thought, well, that's impossible. Nobody in my family's ever had a stroke. I'm 49 years old. I'm healthy as an ox. That shouldn't have never happened. And he also thought that maybe it was a brain tumor. So that night, my wife, who was a scientist, sat down with a doctor who has zero bedside manner, which I'm appreciative of. Indian doctor, a Hindu Indian doctor. This is important. He sat down with my wife and he explained to her that they were going to break protocol that night and they were going to put me in they were going to let her, sorry, I think my phone shut. They were going to put her in the bed with me. She could sleep in the bed. She just couldn't sleep on my wires, my arms, because I was more plugged in than Frankenstein. And he said, you get to sleep in the bed with him tonight because he's not going to wake up in the morning.
Wow.
So that was a lot for my fiance to take on, right? She had just seen me, the color of my Alliance sticker back there, and she thought I was dead when she delivered me to the hospital 5 minutes away. And so the next morning I wake up and I have a mirror over my face, and she's seeing my breath fog the mirror. And she said, "Good morning, honey. I knew you'd make it through the night. I knew you'd wake up." I said, "Hi." She said, "Listen, there's some doctors that want to talk to you, so I'm going to go have breakfast with my dad. I want you to talk to the doctors." I said, "Okay." So she went away. And I'm going to pull off the road up here because the road's really bumpy.
Okay.
Texas roads are not all they're cracked up to be. I'm going to pull over for just a minute. I don't know if you can pause the recording, but I can do this whether you pause it or not, so you don't have to. The light's actually turning for everybody, so it's a good time for me.
Yeah. Thanks for being safe.
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's see. This is a good spot to pull in. I'm going to pull in right here. So doctors, there's 4 doctors all dressed in their lab coats. I feel like I'm looking at Doogie Howser, and they said, "Hey, we've got some questions for you." I said, "Okay, good, because I've got some questions for you." And they said, "What do you know about a stroke?" I said, "I don't know anything about a stroke except you just told me that I had one." And they said, "Yes, you did have one, and we're trying to figure out how you survived it." I said, huh? Okay, that's a heck of a way of greeting somebody. I don't know what that means. I don't know how I survived it either. And he said, "Okay, well, let me explain something to you about a stroke. We have a stroke in America every 4 minutes. That's that's a lot. Okay, that's just America.
Right.
We have a stroke every 4 minutes in America, and 1 in 4 of those strokes is fatal. The stroke I had." And he said, "What I'm telling you is that your body should have been dead before you hit the ground." And I said, "That's weird." And he said, "No, that's called a brainstem stroke. We've never met a brainstem stroke survivor." I thought, well, that's really weird. Then he questioned me about my diet. And I said, "Well, I'm a carnivore. I only eat meat." He said, "Well, wait a minute. What about vegetables?" "I don't eat them." And he said, "Well, you have to eat vegetables. You need your vitamins." And I said, "I get all of the vitamins that I need from my food, from my meats. I eat." He says, "Well, what do you eat?" Very skeptical. And the other guys are like, they're writing like this. And they can't believe what they're hearing.
Right.
And I said, "Well, okay, so every now and then I might deviate and I might have green beans, but I just don't do that. I eat mostly cow, mostly meat or beef, mostly ribeyes. That's my favorite cut. And I eat fish, I eat chicken, I like wings. But at the time, I was not seed oil averse. I didn't realize I was. I just didn't stop eating seed oils." And he said, "That's impossible." And I said, "Oh, wait a minute, what's impossible?" He said, "That that's the way you eat." And I said, "But from what I just gathered, it's impossible that I survived a stroke that I just had. So which is impossible, that I survived the stroke or that I survived the stroke from eating only meat?" He kind of did one of these, and he turned around and walked out the door.
Well, the changes that you made, in taking your health into your own hands is kind of joining the chorus of a lot of people like myself who have made similar changes. I didn't do anything as extreme as a carnivore diet, but we'll talk about the nuances and the difference. The fact is that the bad advice that we've been given in this country around diet and nutrition, I feel specifically has led to the obesity epidemic, the dependence, if you will, on the pharmaceutical industry, the food manufacturing industry. Just to recap briefly, my heaviest, I was 254 pounds. So what you did, very similar
How tall are
changes.
you?
5'11".
I'm 5'9".
Okay,
So,
I've
yep.
sustained a weight loss of over 65 pounds for years now. My intervention was a low carb diet. I've dabbled into the ketogenic and even into the carnivore space a little bit. I'm not a full blown carnivore, but my belief is, and what I practice and what I advocate as a professional health coach, that anyone can make changes and improvements by increasing their meat consumption, eggs, and other nutrient dense foods, which were vilified by the dietary guidelines of Americans, and avoiding the things that were basically supposed to be the foundation of the human diet, like you mentioned, processed grains, seed oils, and sugar specifically. So I use the slogan "Eat meat, not wheat," which I hope you will
Eat
subscribe.
meat,
Yes,
not wheat.
eat meat, not wheat. I hope you'll
That's great.
subscribe to my newsletter and share that hashtag to just raise awareness around the fact that people can improve their health by basically doing the exact opposite of what the so-called experts said. You mentioned that a staff of surgeons was dumbfounded as to how you were able to miraculously survive something that should have killed you, right?
Correct. Correct.
What do you attribute that to?
Um, Number one, God.
Okay.
He is my savior. And I hope that doesn't alienate people when I say that. But I'm going to tell you that having faith and hope in God, not for what he does, but for who he is to you, the very first thing I say is I attribute it to him. Second, I attribute it to the fact that I gained knowledge of something I could do that I could sustain that didn't require putting drugs in my body, but instead food that was created by our creator. And I liked it. And I saw results, not just in me, but in people around me, including people I love. They're the ones who proved to me that it worked. And I give it up to the fact that eating that way brought me to a better metabolic state in my life to survive something that was unsurvivable. I can tell you this, that every single doctor that I've spoken to cannot believe that I had a brainstem stroke. They even have questioned. I had, well, not one, I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 different doctors that asked for the reports from my brain scan because they wanted to see that it truly was a brainstem stroke. Because you have to understand, when there's a swelling in your brainstem, there's nowhere for the swelling to go. If it happens in your head, you've got room a little bit, not a lot. But that's where you hear people moaning and crying when they have a stroke. That was happening all over the floor that I was on. Of all the people who were having strokes, mostly males, but they're moaning because their head hurts so bad. Well, that's the swelling. Okay. There's nowhere for the swelling to go in your brainstem, in your neck, because it's smaller than a half an inch. And when it swells, it literally cuts off all the blood to your brain and you die instantly. Like there's no surviving it. Okay. So doctors didn't believe it. So I attribute the fact that metabolically I was in the right place to begin with, that I got healthy almost, well, I was out of the hospital in 6 days. So does that answer the question you asked me?
I
I
think
hope.
so. Do you feel that this sudden influx of refined carbohydrates from the pancakes and all the other stuff that you bombarded your body with just prior to this was like a precipitating event that triggered
I
the
think
stroke?
so. I
Okay.
think so. I had a calcium score done 2 weeks prior to the stroke. Coincidentally, I went to lifescreening.com and I set up a life screening because I didn't have health insurance, by the way, when I had my stroke. I do want to give that up to Advent Hospital. They wrote off 88% of my bill.
Hmm.
And I'll be very forthright with people. If you're worried about whether or not you should go to the hospital when you're sick, go to the hospital. Choose a hospital that has a foundation behind it that will cover your bills, because if they truly care about you, they're going to fix you and not charge you. Okay. And I want to say that they wrote off a $120,000 bill to me, they wrote off 88% of that. So people need to be aware of that. Okay. That doesn't mean go out and hurt yourself. That doesn't mean go out and do something silly and stupid or live stupid and reckless and don't buy health insurance. I'm saying don't make bad decisions in your life over whether or not you can afford health insurance.
Right.
Don't make bad decisions in your life about whether or not you should get medical care. You should always get medical care if something doesn't feel right. So go.
Exactly. We
Going
do not, let me just say, we do not in any way want to discourage people from medical care, especially if needed.
100%.
When I speak about the evils of this industry, the sick care industry model that we have, it's when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
chronic conditions, which are lifestyle conditions that are being treated with pharmaceutical intervention to mask the symptoms and enable people to continue the poor health habits that are causing the disease, so quote unquote disease in the first place. That's what I'm
Take
referring
a
to. Our
Yeah,
system
take
is
a drug
brilliant.
to treat a symptom.
Yes, our system is brilliant if you have a traumatic injury or if you have an acute disorder, medical treatment is warranted, but the system is to try to enable people to just continue in their lifestyle and not address the root cause. That's the problem. And most of
So
the time it goes back to diet. I know exercise is a big factor. You mentioned you're working
yeah.
out. A couple of times you mentioned sustainability. I always
Hmm.
stress don't do anything that's so extreme that you can't continue to do it, because if you do, you're going to lose whatever benefit you gain. You're going to be right back where you started or maybe even worse off.
Right. And speaking of that, Dr. Huberman is one of my favorite doctors. I love listening to him talk. I hope one day I get to meet him because he's a neuroscientist.
Hmm.
He's at Stanford University. My family, my grandfather used to be secretary at Stanford, so I have a lot of respect for where he is. Um, I learned about taking cold showers through him and through Dr. Eric Berg. And it's interesting because taking a cold shower is actually sustainable. Because what
Hmm.
happens if you lose power? What happens if you lose gas and you don't have heat? Once you've taken a cold shower, you're kind of used to it. It's like shave your head, right? I have a full head of hair, but if
Right.
I shave it off, I know what I look like bald. I did that when my mom had cancer. So I lost the fear of what would mean if I lost my hair. Well, taking a cold shower, once I've started doing it, now I realize by the end of my shower, I never turn the hot water on. I'm not worried if I ever lose hot water again.
Right.
So what I'm saying to that is that's sustainable, right? It's how you perceive it up here.
Right.
It's because again, I'm trying to help people connect their brains to their heart, right? And
Right.
sustainability in anything you do, you can connect your brain to your heart like that if it's sustainable in the first place, right?
I agree.
So that's to speak to that.
Right. So, in the 7 minutes we have remaining,
Okay.
you are on the road to Ketocon. So tell me, what are the highlights? Have you ever been before? I've never been, but I just some of the speakers who are going to be there. What are you anticipating it's going to be like?
So I got to meet Dr. Barry in at the Keto Conference in Orlando, August of 2022. He's my doctor hero. It was great to finally get a chance to meet him. He's going to be there, so I get to meet him again. I
And that's
get to
Ken
see
Berry.
Dr. Ken Berry. I
Okay.
get to see Dr. Bosworth, Dr. Boz. I get to see her again. Got to meet her at KetoCon or at the Keto Conference in Orlando. And I have two really close friends, Buzz and Bruce. I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to them.
Okay.
They're very, very modest people. Um, Buzz and Bruce live a little less than 30 minutes from me back in Florida. And I got them into carnivore. They were actually in keto when they saw that I was doing carnivore, and they got into carnivore. Now they're hardcore. Their transformation's been nothing short of amazing. And you should really interview them. They're
Okay.
amazing people to talk to, and they're going to be there. In fact, I just woke up this morning, went to church with them at Joel Osteen's church, Lakewood. We
Okay.
went to church this morning, and that was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
then so I traveled 1,000 miles to go have breakfast and go to church with my neighbors. I
Right.
think that's awesome. So they're going to be there, and for me, the highlight of this is that I get to share with people the most simple way of eating you could ever find. I've done it all. Never a vegan. I was a vegetarian. I was a pescatarian, and then I was a selectarian. I was a juicer. I was the standard American, standard Western diet, and then I was a carnivore. I was a lion diet. I've fasted. I've gone, I think 5 days is my longest. My wife has gone 8. It's amazing.
Mm.
So I tell you that to say that when I go here, I get to meet people who are keenly interested in that thing right there, the RV
Right.
that's in the back of the shot.
Mhm.
They want to know what it's like living in an RV, because there's a lot of people out there who really would love to like sell everything and do this. It's kind of a nomadic lifestyle, right? I contacted Ryan Geffron and his mom Robin. They're the ones who put on Ketocon. I
Okay.
contacted them and said, "Hey, Buzz and Bruce told me about this. I'd love to be able to come out to it. I have this RV that I'm decorating, and at the time I was in the middle of starting it." They said, "This sounds fantastic. Why don't you come out and display?" So I'm actually going to be setting up Thursday morning ahead of
Mhm.
everybody else. I'm the first one in and the last one out because I take up so much space.
Mhm.
I'm going to bring the rig in Thursday morning, and they're going to set up everything after that. And I
Awesome.
get to set it up like I'm at camp. So there's going to be a carpet rolled out. There's going to be the barbecue grill set up. I mean, it's going to be less propane tank. I can't have that because that's illegal. But I'm going to be set up so that people can literally, I'll open up the door and you can walk
Right.
inside and see my home. How many people do you know in this world, no matter what they do they open their home to you to let
Right.
you tour? Right? That's not really interesting. I don't really care to walk into somebody's home and just go on a tour. That's not what it's about. But this is something totally different. So I get to share this wonderful life with other people.
Right.
The reason why I've wrapped the rig, and I paid for this out of my own pocket. I did this out of that word I told you about, passion, right? I did this because that starts the conversation. Everywhere I go,
Right.
people do this. They're taking pictures. I mean, I'm driving down the highway, hitting my train horn
And
because they're waving,
and
thumbs up.
that's something you mentioned in a social media post that really caught my attention was they can't censor this vehicle driving across the country. You know, we're transmitting now electronic media. This is subject to censorship. Okay, this
Correct.
message is not very popular with the powers that be, and they will do anything to suppress this message. So again, I'm going to share your success story with your permission.
Please,
Eatmeatnotwheat.com. That's the domain.
I'll share
uh,
that.
People like you who have made these changes, who have taken their health into their own hands, that are taking this message to a greater community. It's a grassroots effort. That's what it's going to
Yes.
take to turn this around. Collectively, we have to come
Yes.
together and
Yes.
share that message of good health. Your message of faith is awesome. I appreciate that. I appreciate you
Oh,
being
you're
a
welcome.
guest today. And I hope that the rest of your trip to Ketocon is a success, and I look
Thank you.
forward to seeing some of the sights and sounds from you. So thank you so much, Greg, for joining me today. I
Thank you,
really do
Jason. It's going to
appreciate
be
it.
awesome.
Yes, and we will be keeping in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Hmm.
you. Take care.
Yes, sir. You too.
Train horn.